Right behind me is the Arkansas Black Apple, and it is finally ready to be harvested here in the beginning of November. It is an heirloom apple, and it's known for its very unique, tangy, spicy taste. However, off the tree, they taste horrible. Well, that's even if you could get your teeth through their hard skin. But after a few months of cold storage, these apples are amazing. So come with me and let's harvest the Arkansas Black Apples today off my dwarf tree, and I will let you know all about this heirloom apple, how you can best grow it because, well, it's a triploid, meaning its pollen is completely sterile. But it is well worth growing, let me tell you. Amongst all my apple trees, I have 7 or 8 now, it's one of my favorites. Hi, I'm Kim. This is all of City Oasis in Northern California, Zone 9B. Today we're going to be talking all about the Arkansas Black Apple and, well, what you can do with other apples and apple scraps, like making apple vinegar. Now, as you can see, these apples are not huge, and that's for 2 reasons. One, I didn't thin them enough. I am still getting over my tendency to leave too many apples on the tree. The second reason is this is really only the second year this tree has fruited. By next year, the apples are going to be much larger. You can also see how dark these apples are. Now, the Arkansas Black Apple is believed to be descended from the wine sap apple. It was developed in Arkansas in the mid-1800s, between 1840 and 1870, depending on who you read. And after they're stored in a cool, dark place for a couple of months, here in California, that has to be the fridge because we don't have basements in cool weather, even in the winter. But throughout that cool storage period, they do turn darker, and by the time you go to eat them or cook with them, they are almost black. Now, when you're harvesting apples, you can use pruners. If you do, make sure they're sterilized with alcohol because you don't want to risk any bacteria getting to your apple trees. However, you can also just twist, and they should fall right off if they're completely ripe. So yeah, don't let anyone tell you you have to do it with pruners or you have to do it by hand. That's completely up to you. The key thing is you do not want to damage the tree. So if you're finding when you're twisting that you tend to pull off leaves, or worse than that, part of the tree, then go ahead and clip them off just to be safe. Now, triploid apples definitely need 2 other apple trees nearby. Why 2? Why not just 1? Well, at least one of them has to be a good pollinator for your triploid, your Arkansas Black or whatever other triploid apple tree you have. But then also, those 2 trees need to be pollinators for each other because this tree or any triploid cannot offer its services to any other apple tree. It's, again, got sterile pollen. Now, you can look up what trees pollinate the Arkansas Black, but the 3 that I have that do a good job of this are the Granny Smith, the Pink Lady, and the Empire Apple. So they all pollinate my Arkansas Black. And I have many apples that pollinate each other as well. Now, if you plant an Arkansas Black apple tree, they take 2 to 5 years before they start producing their fruit. If you grow one from seed, which I'm going to experiment with, they will take the full 5 years before producing fruit. But wow, what a chance to see if you can grow them true. I've got a friend who grew an Arkansas Black from seed, and 7 years later it's producing true Arkansas Black apples. So that's enough for me to give it a try for sure. So why might you want to grow the Arkansas Black heirloom apple tree? Well, as I mentioned, they have a very unique flavor profile. Once stored for a few months, when you go to eat these apples, you're going to be surprised. They have this very much spice-filled flavor, kind of cinnamony. They're tangy, almost a sweet tart flavor, and they've got hints of vanilla and almond in them. Now, I had heard bits and pieces of that description from other people in the past, but when I had my own first homegrown ones last fall, I was very happy to say that that is true. That is exactly how they tasted, even better than I'd imagined, so I'm super happy about that. Also, with that thick skin of theirs, they are very long lasting, so they will actually age well for you for 4 to 6 months, maybe even longer if they're in a cool, dark place, like your fridge. Now, if you do a little research, you're going to find that these apple trees are said to be hardy in zones 5 to 8. I'm in zone 9B. It is a very hot, very intensely dry summer here, but with irrigating once a week, my whole orchard, including the Arkansas black apple tree, does just fine here and really gave me a good crop this year. And I think next year it'll be in its prime finally and will give me even more. So I'd up that range and say it goes all the way to zone 9 because I'm getting apples here. Well, I'm off to put these Arkansas black apples in the fridge. I'm not going to wash them. That helps them keep longer. And next, I am going to make some apple pie filling from some of my other apple harvest and make some apple vinegar with the scraps. Come along with me. Apple vinegar is so good for so many things I want to share with you. Okay, well, there's really not much to apple scrap vinegar, and I call it apple scrap vinegar because it's not made from apple cider. As you can see, it's made from apple scraps, the cores. Sometimes you can make it just from the peels. Like when I make the apple pie filling later this evening or tomorrow, I'll use the apple peelings from that to make more apple scrap vinegar. But here today, I've got the apple cores from dicing up apples for apple butter, which I'll show you how that's going in just a sec. So it's super easy to do. All you need are some apple scraps. That can be cores like these. So you're just going to fill your jars. I've used quarts, but you can use smaller, with your apple scraps. Stuff you don't want to waste. I mean, I'm going to have a lot of excess and I'll give those to my chickens and they'll really appreciate it, but I do like to make a lot of vinegar. So it's very easy. You fill your jars, whatever size they are, about 3/4 full, and then you're going to cover them with a water sugar mixture. And basically it is 1 cup water for 1 tablespoon of sugar. So I've got 2 cups of water in this, and I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of sugar and just, stir it up, get it at least mostly dissolved. That's not super important, and then once done, you're going to pour it over your apple scraps. Like I said, very, very simple. So, and you're going to want to leave about 2 inches of headspace there. Then you're going to want to loosely cover it, not with the lid, but something else. I like to use a coffee filter. And you're going to secure it with either a rubber band or a handy dandy scrunchie. I don't like to use the whites or the grays, so that will work too. And you're going to secure it so, nothing untoward can get in it. And really, that's all there is to it. I'm now going to leave this in a warm, dark place. Usually when you store canned goods, like, say, this salsa, you want to store it in a cool, dry place. But when you're making vinegar, you're going for fermentation, so you want it to go in a semi-warm, dark place. So I'm going to go ahead and get the water and sugar and fill up this jar. Okay, now we're going to dump this 2 tablespoons of sugar into this 2 cups of water. Now, sugar is very important. I know in a lot of recipes, a lot of people want to cut back on the sugar, but you do not want to do that for this recipe. And that's because the bacteria that makes the fermentation possible is going to be feeding off of the sugar. So you definitely need that sugar, a tablespoon for each cup of water, present. Another thing that's super important is cleanliness when it comes to this. So do make sure that your jars are very clean before you start, all your dishes and utensils, everything you use. And another thing that's really important,
that you might not think about is the water. So if you have chlorinated water at your place, you'll want to leave it sit out overnight, and that way the chlorine can evaporate. Or you can use filtered water. I'm on a well here, so our water is not chlorinated. All right, so I've got those loosely covered, keeping out everything I don't want to get in. I'm going to put them in a warm, dark place and let them start their whole job of fermenting. Now, what can I use these for? For cleaning of all kinds. Of course, you know how well vinegar works, fights mildew and mold in such an excellent way. I mean, I use it all the time. But it's also just great for cleaning purposes. Put it in a spray bottle and use it anywhere you would use a store-bought cleaner and save yourself the money, and you know what you're putting on your counters and such. Vinegar also makes a very good hair rinse or a face tonic, but mostly I have to say what I use my vinegar for is in recipes. So you can use the apple scrap vinegar you make in any recipe you want. The only thing you can't use it for is canning or pickling because of the low acid level. It's not apple cider vinegar. You didn't make it from apple cider, you're making it from apple scraps. And the vinegar used for pickling or canning needs to be at least 5% acidity, and this stuff won't be that. It's still great vinegar though, and I love to use it to make dressings, salad dressings. My favorite thing probably to use it for is when I make my family's special stuffing recipe that we use at the holidays, and I always say, why don't we eat this more often because it's so good? Maybe I'll include that down in the description. It's a very hot stuffing recipe, and I'm not sure if it's Portuguese from my grandfather's side or Scottish from my grandmother's side or a mixture of the two, but we love it, and it definitely uses a lot of vinegar. Now you can stir this every few days if you'd like, or take a peek, see if any scum is forming on the top. If it is, you can just skim it off, but you leave it for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, you're going to strain off all of the liquid, okay? And it should smell at that point like a sweet apple cider. And then you can throw these scraps either to chickens if you have them, or put them in your compost pile or a raised bed and cover it with soil, and that will be great. We'll feed all the microbes and earthworms. Then you're going to leave just the liquid left behind, right? You're going to keep this loose cover on it, and you're going to set it aside for another 2 to 4 weeks. Because that's the time that it's actually going to start to ferment and get that tang. It's going to get the vinegar taste, the vinegar smell. And actually, that's how you'll know it's done. At 2 weeks, you'll start to smell it, take a little taste. And if it smells and tastes like vinegar, well, then it is, and it's done. And if not, let it go for another week. And, you know, it might take 4 to 6 weeks, but I've never had it take longer than 6. Usually it's done at 3 or 4 weeks. Now, at the point that you believe that liquid smells and tastes like vinegar, you put a lid on it and put it in your fridge. And how long does it keep? Well, forever, because it's vinegar. Now, it won't last forever because you're going to use it up, but it could. Now, let me show you the apple butter I've been making. So here is the apple butter. I've just added in the sugars and spices. Before that, all I did was dice up the apples. Now, you can see the peels are still on them, and that's because I've made this recipe both with and without the peels. And guess what? After it's cooked, as long as it needs to cook, the peels are nowhere to be found. Honestly, there was absolutely no difference between making them with the peels or without. So, first of all, the peels have a lot of fiber and nutrition in them, and secondly, it's a lot easier to not have to peel them. So this is 15 cups of diced apples, basically 3 pounds. And what have I added to it? Brown sugar and sugar, as well as vanilla, cinnamon, cloves and nutmeg, and a little bit of salt. And that's it. No water, because the apples cook down all on their own in their own juices. If you don't know what apple butter is, it's kind of like applesauce. Maybe its fancier cousin. It is much darker because, of course, it caramelizes as it cooks. And it's richer, sweeter, and thicker than applesauce. It's a spread, really.
Now you can use it on bread, you can use it on scones or biscuits. Some people use it along with, say, cheese and nuts and crackers, but I've never done that. I always use it on biscuits or scones. And it's lovely. And all there is to it is it's gonna cook on low in this crock pot for 10 hours. Then I'm going to get my immersion blender and puree it. It will have cooked down almost entirely by then, but I'll finish the job with my immersion blender. And then I'll let it cook uncovered at that point for about 2 more hours, basically until it's exactly the consistency I want. Then I'll just put it in jars and give it a water bath, and it will be good for a year. I really wish you guys could smell this right now because the aroma is truly the epitome of autumn. I wish I could make this into a candle. Apple butter candle would be fantastic. So I encourage you to give both of these recipes a try. You won't be disappointed. Whether you have a surplus of apples yourself like me, or if you're getting them from a friend or farmer's market or from the grocery store. Right now they're very inexpensive, so this is the time. Make yourself some apple butter. Make yourself some apple pie filling, some apple vinegar, all the apple things. It's fall, so why not? It's the time to celebrate apples. So it's been 10 hours, and that is what the apple butter looks like right now. I'm going to puree it, and it's actually such a soft consistency. I don't think it's going to need 2 more hours after I puree it with the immersion blender. I think it's probably only going to take an hour. I only started using an immersion blender a couple of years ago. I think my first recipe I used it for was making cream of squash soup. Definitely worth it. Now you could totally make this recipe with a regular blender, but this is super convenient. Well, I ran the immersion blender 60 seconds, maybe 90 max. And I'd say it has done a fabulous job. I think I only see 1 or 2 small pieces of skin in this whole thing. Otherwise, it's already the consistency I'd like. I'm going to cook it for 1 more hour, I think, and that'll thicken it up just a slight bit more, and then we'll give it its water bath.
4 jars of delicious apple butter about to go into the water bath canner. And how do I know they're delicious? Because I tasted them and they are super, super good.
Now that water should be 1 inch to 2 inches above the top of the jars, and it is. Gonna let these come back to a boil, and then I'll process them with the lid on, boiling for 15 minutes. The little bubbles being released, air bubbles, that's totally normal. That's a good thing. After they are done being processed, I'll let them come to room temperature for 12 to 24 hours, and then they will be safe on the shelf for, well, up to 18 months. They won't last that long, though. So the apple butter is all finished now, labeled, and ready to be enjoyed.
And it looks scrumptious.
So I'll be back again in a month or 6 weeks to check in on the apple vinegar. And in January, maybe we'll come back for a taste test on the Arkansas black apples. I hope you're considering planting some apple trees and other fruit trees too. The winter is the best time to do it. Bare root fruit trees planted in, say, January, February, or March, soon as your ground is able to receive them, are a great investment in the future. And it's not the too distant future either. It's amazing how fast your fruit trees will start bearing. Maybe just a little at first, but within a few years after that, you're going to have more fruit than you know what to do with. I'll let you in on a secret, though. They make great gifts. I'm definitely going to be giving some apple butter and applesauce to some of my kids for Christmas. And I'm thinking of making some apple Roselle pie, maybe with these Arkansas black apples. Really, the rewards from growing fruit are so many. I couldn't begin to name them, but believe me, it's true. Definitely think about planting some fruit trees for yourself.